Hello and welcome back to the fourth lesson in a series of home glass hacks. I'll be teaching you how you can make glass at home using different methods. In this session we're going to be learning the copper foiling technique, which is an at-home easier way of creating a leaded stained glass finish. So I have here some designs, feel free to copy from them. These are just simple designs where you can immortalize your own pet in the form of a small medallion. So starting off with difficulty from easiest to most difficult, the easiest would be the abstract cat design, which is just a series of triangles assembled to look like a cat. After that, you can decide to elaborate on your designs by including eyes using the solder droplets, or adding things like whiskers using copper wire. You can also then start to explore and expand on your cutting techniques for your glass by choosing patterns that have a lot of curves in them, but do note that these are more tricky to do. So we'll get started. For this technique you will need a 40-watt soldering iron. I recommend the brand Weller. A soldering iron stand is absolutely essential. It stops any wires or anything like that getting caught up on your iron. And it comes with a sponge as well, so that you can clean your iron as you go. Don't plug this on just yet. You'll need some solder. I recommend lead-free solder for safety. You'll need copper foil. This is 1/4-inch thick copper foil, and it has a copper coloured back on it as well, but you can get different foils that have black backs or silver backs. You'll need a running pliers. This is to help with cutting your glass. The glass sits in between the two teeth and clamps down on it and stresses it so that the glass comes apart. You'll also need a metal ruler or a set square. You'll need a paintbrush and some soldering flux. A grozing pliers. These are used to nibble away at the glass to neaten it up after it's been cut. You'll also need a permanent marker. And you'll need an oil-filled glass cutter with a rotating wheel in it. So you'll see on this glass cutter it has a nice heavy metal end on it. That's something that we're going to be using during the cutting process, and it's filled with oil which lubricates the cutting wheel. You need a selection of glass or mirror. You'll just need to make sure that they're all pretty similar thicknesses. I've chosen a nice bright colour selection as I will be making the parrot design today. So next we'll learn how to cut your glass. Always wear safety glasses when working with glass at home or in the workshops. So when you've selected the glass you want for the part of your design you want, try to line it up. You want to be efficient with your glass, not to cut in the middle of it, but at the same time you want to make the cutting easier for yourself. So don't squeeze it right to the edge, give yourself some room. and then outline it with a permanent marker. First, you'll need to section off the piece of glass you will cut the final shape from. So for this, I'm going to section off the corner. Hold firmly down, and with strong downward force, run your glass scorer all the way along the edge of the ruler. There's two ways you can cut the glass now. Either use your running pliers. However, if these don't work on the first few attempts, don't keep squeezing, as that could shatter the glass. Instead, try using the metal end on your glass cutter. Always tap on the reverse of where you've done the score line. Now that you have the corner of the glass cut out, you can go back in and cut out your shape. Curves are trickier than straight lines. Just take them slowly and firmly. Sometimes glass will have an uneven side and a more even side. Try to score and cut on the more even side. When you're working with opaque glass, you won't be able to follow the method of putting your glass over your design. Instead, you're going to have to cut up your paper design into the parts that you'll be putting in opaque glass. and you'll be offering that paper cut out up to the glass and tracing around it with a permanent marker. So as usual, section off the part of the glass you'll be using and then start to cut out your design from there. After all of your glass parts are cut out, go ahead and wash them in warm water. Next, we'll be grinding the glass to make it fit better and take off any sharp edges. For this, I'm using a 60 grit diamond hand pad, but you can also use some wet and dry sanding paper. This step isn't totally necessary, but it does clean up the design a lot. Always make sure you wear a mask and goggles for this. You want to clean and dry your glass completely before we start the copper foiling process. So number your glass pieces with your permanent marker, just so you know where all the parts fit. When you're applying the foil, make sure that the overlap is even on both sides. Apply it all the way around the outside edge of your glass piece, and once you've done that, you can start to flatten in the corners. After you flatten in the corners, you can then flatten in along the straight edges. Then go back and flatten the edges even more using your fit tool. If you don't have a fit tool, just use the back of a spoon or the back of a handle. Continue to cover all edges of the pieces of your design in the copper foil. You will then need to anchor your design into place. I use thumbtacks for this, or you can use regular tacking nails. Put on your soldering iron to heat up. First, using the paintbrush, cover your design in flux. Make sure you're wearing gloves from this stage onwards, as the chemicals used here can be an irritant for the skin. Make sure you never touch your eyes or your face during this process. Start by soldering some tack welds to keep your design in place. Be careful not to touch the end of the soldering iron or the glass when it's still hot. I recommend using a respirator that has filters especially for fumes and gas while doing this process. Place the piece of solder in by the soldering iron and run the iron along the length of the join. You'll see there's a lot of solder left over on the edges. This can be used to tin the whole edges and side of your design. Any excess will just drip off, so make sure you're working on a surface that won't burn. Be careful, as the solder that drips off is very hot, so do not touch until it's cool. To make the eye, you'll be creating a bead of solder, so put your glass design down on a piece of wet paper towel and build up a bead of solder where the eye goes. To create hooks for your design, just use regular copper wire. Make sure it has flux on it before you go to solder. Clean your glass to make sure all flux is now off the piece. We can now blacken the silver solder using a black patina. Use some paper toweling and scrub the patina on. And here's the final result. To keep up to date with more of my projects, follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Laura Quinn Design. And if you have a go at this yourself at home, use the hashtag HomeGlassHacks when you post online. Good luck, enjoy, and as always, stay glassy.